try to duplicate what's happening when I brake. Nobody's behind me. Okay. If you can pick that up in the video, it's pretty violent sometimes. That was a pretty mild go of it, to be honest. Sometimes it's really bad. I've replaced upper and lower ball joints on the front. Replaced the drag link on both sides. I checked my tie rods, they seem fine, from what I can tell at least. So my next plan of attack is to do the track bar. I'm just going to do the bushings. I have a leveling kit, so it's an aftermarket one, and I'm quite sure, I don't remember specifically because it was like 6 years ago, 5 or 6 years ago, but I guess I'm assuming when I got the leveling kit put in, they must have put a new track bar in, and maybe the bushings were just bad because I don't think they should be failing this early. So I'm gonna replace those and then do a little bit of a video on how I'm gonna do that. I want to just try with a shop press instead of trying to rent a tool. But if that doesn't work, if I can't really figure out an easy way to do that, I'll just rent a ball joint press. And yeah, and then I'll do another follow-up video to see if that corrected the problem. Okay, so we're under the truck here. I already got both bolts broken loose on the track bar. So for those of you who aren't aware, or don't already know what a track bar is, it essentially locates the axle centered under the vehicle. So it just keeps your axle solid and centered. Now to some degree your leaf springs will also help with that, but without a track bar you'd be in very sore shape for sure. So this is a 2000 model year F250, and you can see where my socket is there on the track bar. I know the lighting's a little bad outside here, but it goes to the frame here. Well, there's a bracket on that attaches to the axle here, just in front of the spring perch. And then it comes up here to another bracket underneath that attaches right to the frame. And on this model, it's both sides of the bushing are exactly the same. On some later models, you have something that looks a little bit like what your ball joints look like down on this end. But on this model year, they're both exactly the same. Or they should be at least. Now I have a leveling kit on my truck, so this track bar is actually aftermarket. It's an adjustable one because when you raise your truck you have to lengthen your track bar. So hopefully that's not part of the reason why I'm getting shaking. Like hopefully it's not warped or bent or anything like that. If it is, I'll have to, I guess, look into getting a new one. These are massive nuts. I'll show you the torque specs in the book. I forget them offhand, but I think it's like 390 something on this model. The year before, 1999, it was only like 130 something. So they must have beefed them up quite a bit on the 2000. And then later models even go up higher. So on this truck here, we try to get in here. I'm crawling on the ground and it's a wee bit uncomfortable. Okay, let's see if we can get in here. So on the back, there's the nut and just goes through your bracket here that mounts to the frame. Now you also, I believe depending on what kind of lift you do, you also need to do a drop bracket here to bring it down lower. But I think this is just the stock one because it still says over here, you might not see it, but it says forward. So I think this is the original bracket. I think they just replaced the track bar. Now mine have a, let's see, I don't know if I can get back there very easily. But on this nut, there's a tab. Okay, there we go. Right up here. There's a tab that comes off, and it just actually is there's little tangs on the nut that keep this on, but this is just so you don't have to have a wrench there. So it'll hold itself as you're torquing and loosing. And as you go to put it in, it'll just spin around until it contacts somewhere hard, and then you can just do your nut in. And that's on both sides. So I've had bad luck with those before breaking off, but this time they seem to be pretty solid on these nuts here, so that's good. Now, these nuts are really hard to get out, or sorry, these bolts are really hard to get out, because they're massive bolts and quite long and whatnot. I use just a standard breaker bar, standard 3/8 breaker bar, or would this be 1/2 inch? I forget. But just your standard size breaker bar. And the amount of flex, so this is like, I don't know, this is about a 2-foot breaker bar. The amount of flex was a lot, and it didn't want to break loose. So if you have access to either a really good quality one, or like this guy, this is a 3/4 inch drive breaker bar. If you have something access to that might you'd be better off trying that. What I ended up having to do on this on the driver's side one is I got the breaker bar on there, and I was actually able to I had to use my feet. I pushed it with both my feet, and that broke it loose. But when I went over to this one, just the position, it was all in. I was not able to take it off. I was not able to get enough leverage or get my feet on it to push. So I ended up heating the back nut, and then that actually, it came off it broke free relatively easy after that. Now you may or may not, depending on your model, you may or may not have to take off your drag-a-link to get to the bolt here. On this truck, I'm going to try to do without it. I think I should be fine. So I was able, with this is a fairly short socket. Oh, and both of these bolts are 1 inch and 3/16 in size. Or I think that might also be like a 32 mil or something like that, 31 to 32 mil. And so I was able to break it loose with just a breaker bar. So this was able to fit in there just enough to get it on and to loosen it. And then I just have an extension, and I'm able to kind of get, once I broke it loose, it's not completely seated on the nut, but it's enough to do it. So let's see, do a little show and tell here, see if I can get this out the rest of the way on camera, because that way I don't actually know whether or not it'll come out without taking the drag link off. I suspect it will, but you never know until you try sometimes. So. But maybe I can try for you, and that way you don't have to wonder. You can just go ahead and do it either way. Okay, so we're almost loose there. Okay, so that is out. Now I'm going to take my socket off here, my ratchet off. I got a dead blow hammer here. Let's see. Yeah, I think it should be okay, but maybe I just don't want to have to take it off. You know, I'm sometimes trying to get the shortest, easiest way. And will that back out? No, I don't think it will. So I'm gonna fiddle with this a little more, but I'm pretty sure I'm gonna have to pop the drag link off. I'll just take it off here, and that should give me enough. So yeah, I guess just keep track of the orientation it was in. The factory one, I think, has a curve down at the bottom end. And yeah, that's about it. I'll pop this out and I'll see you in the shop when I go to press the new ones in. So before I show my attempt at trying to put the new bushings in, these are the torque specs here. And this is the Haynes manual, so it should be pretty standard. But yeah, you can see the 1999 model is only 129. 2000 through 2002, which would be my year, 369. And then 2003 and 2004 goes up to 406. And I don't know, your average guy probably doesn't have a torque wrench that goes so high. So I'll probably torque it as high as my wrench goes. I think mine goes to like 230 or 250, something like that. And then I'll do that. I'm gonna lube my bolts to make sure that there's no restriction, so I can get as high of a torque as possible. So I'm gonna lube the threads before I put them back on, and I'll torque them as high as my wrench goes, and then I'm going to try to just see if they'll go any more with the breaker bar. And if they do, great. If not, so basically I'm just gonna get it as tight as I can with the breaker bar, and hope for the best. Because basically, I'll take you back out to the truck here. But basically what happens is, especially on this guy, you can see there's play side to side. So your torque at least has to be tight enough to crunch these in. And if it's not, then I think, you know, I'm gonna have to invest in a breaker bar, a bigger breaker bar, or somehow get it at least to 200 odd foot-pounds. So I think like I said, mine goes up to 250 or something. So I'll max that out. The top one has a pretty thick bracket, so I think this one's going to be a tighter fit. I don't think you're necessarily going to need to warp the metal or bend the metal into size there. But this one definitely, you'll need to bend it down to contact, at least. Because there's a bit of a spring in it. And so yes, I do also definitely need to take out my bar. So I've already loosened it. I just leave the threads on here, just on the end. So if I need to tap it a little bit, I'm not going to damage my threads. I don't want to use a pickle fork on it because I just replaced this. Literally like a month ago, not even. I don't want to damage anything either. Okay, so I ended up just coming up by the tire here, standing up by the tire and hitting, pretty good axis here. So I just hit on the bar here and it popped loose. So let me see if this will. And again, when you put this back, just check on your retorque specs. I don't know exactly what they are offhand. And then you're gonna need to put a new pin through to hold that nut as a backup. Yeah, that'll just fall down. I think I'm gonna zip tie it up here so it's out of my way, just so it's not sagging on me. But that should be it. And then there we go. Look at the size of that bad boy. It's pretty big. And my nut already fell down the back. This is again what it looks like here with a little keeper on it. So that'll hold and catch on something so you don't have to hold the back end. Okay, so I'm going to try to show how this is looking to me. Upon initial inspection, they don't look that bad. And I even tried moving it around in the truck. Didn't see it. It's so faint. I'm going to try to duplicate it. Let's see. I maybe should mount it in a vise, but I guess you can just take my word for it. It is moving and it's separating somewhat. And definitely not as bad as I thought it would have been, but I guess I won't know until I road test it to see if it actually fixed the problem or not. Okay, so I finally got it set up in a way that's working so far. I got it to already bust loose a little bit. So basically I just have my 2 blocks with the diamond hole notch in the middle, then just a spacer block. I already got the brake loose, so I'm just going to keep going a little bit. It's a lot tighter than I thought it would be. There we go. And I think my jack's maxed out, so I'm going to have to get some more something in there. Yeah, it's starting to come out. Can you see that? It's actually a pretty tight fit. Okay, I need to get a little bit more height on this, I think. So basically I just have it catching on the far edge of the diamond block. Hopefully you can see that. And then this end is contacting on the bar here. Yeah, you can see that. So it's just the back end of the arm is just hooked on the block, and it's allowing the bushing to push through. Okay, I'm going to try a little bit more here. See if I can at least start it, get it flush. I think it might already be as far as it's going to go. So, but that's the idea. If you don't have it press. I think standard procedure would be to kind of do it in the truck one at a time. I see some guys doing that with a ball joint press. But if you don't have that option, this would be the way to go, I guess. Okay, so I got the old bearing, or bushing rather, pressed out. So I started it with a flat piece over top, so as it compresses, it hit the outer ring, then got it started and broke it loose. And then the rest of the way, I just pressed on the inner ring here, and that drove it right out. That's what it looks like. So just before I put the new one in, I'm just going to hit that with some really light sandpaper real quick, just knock off the rust, and just put a little bit of oil on that. I'm going to press in the new one. Okay, so I got the new one ready to press in. This is it here. From what I can tell, they can go in either way, and on this truck they're both the same. I have a socket here that I found. Depending on what you have, it'll, might be different, so I'm not going to bother saying what kind it is. But I just looked around till I found the one that fit. And you want, again, the contact point to be on the outside here. So right now I'm going to start just on flat bar until it goes in, and then I'm going to flip him so the outside can pass through. And you want to make sure that everything's as straight as possible. You want to go real slow with any kind of pressing. Again, oh, and also on the inside of this, on the inside of the bar, I put a light coat of engine oil. So I don't know if you can see that on the camera. I can see it here. I'm putting very minimal effort into the press, and it's sliding in real nice. If it's any cockeyed, sometimes it'll correct itself, but if within like a pump or two it hasn't started to seat, I would recheck it to make sure nothing's going on. But this one's going in really smooth. So again, I'm just contacting the outer edge of the bushing. I'm not pressing on the rubber to distort that. You certainly don't want to press on the inside part. Even if it would go in, you're probably going to wreck the rubber or disseat it. Okay, so I don't know if I can go much farther. I think that's about as far as I can go, so I'm going to stop. I'm going to let it off a little bit. And then, so you can see I was pressing right around this outer ring. Yeah, so we bottomed out there, so that's why I couldn't go anymore. So I'm going to have to switch my setup to finish pressing it in all the way. And this will go, you just want to press it till it's half and half. So half, you know, so it's equal amounts of shoulder sticking out on either side. Okay, so I got the new ones pressed in. Went pretty well. I just wanted to show one thing real quick that's really important. Whenever you're pressing something, you got to make sure that you can actually visualize that you have clearance. So when I was pressing these ones, I couldn't just assume that it's passing through just because it kind of falls in the hole. So I actually had to get my head under to look. Now you want to do this before you get the press weighted down, for sure, because it could be dangerous, you know, to be under there. But so before you get too much weight on the press, just pop your head under, make sure and be double sure that everything's going to pass without any problems. Okay, so I got the track bar back in. I torqued it to 250. That was as high as my torque wrench went, which was hard enough to get it to there. And then what I did is I put my breaker bar on. We have this long, I guess it's like a breaker bar leveraging. I think this is actually what the guy had made it for. Anyway, so I put that on top and turned about another eighth of a turn. And I didn't want to, you know, risk going over. So I figured that's pretty safe. So I went 250 and then used this to get it about another eighth of a turn. And yeah, that's it. I'm going to put my drag link back on. Then I'm going to take it for a road test, and I'll film that and just let you guys know if it solved the problem or not. At first, when I drove it after getting the track bar back in, it seemed like it was better, and I think it is better, but it's still hopping around. So I'm kind of wondering if that was part of it, but also maybe bad rotors or something, because it doesn't always do it. But I'm just wondering if it's a bad quality metal, like if they may not be warped completely, but maybe they get hot really easily and then start to warp, because it seems like it's the worst when there's heavy braking. So, and I do know the truck was pulling to the right when I brake, even before I replaced the track bar bushings. So yeah, I don't know, I'm kind of at a bit of a loss. I was pretty certain that would be the problem, but then, you know, the bushings didn't look that bad, so I think that was part of it maybe. But I think my next course of action will probably be to replace the front rotors, probably just do a full front brake overhaul. So new calipers, new rotors, and new brake pads. So I guess I'll see how things go over the next couple of days or so, see how it handles. It definitely is better, so I might be able to just limp it along. Do a brake overhaul like that would be pretty expensive. So anyways, that's the update on the track bar. So definitely give it a check on your truck if you're still having those problems, and that may or may not be what your issue is. The symptoms were very indicative of, I think that's the word, of that kind of issue is very indicative of having bad track bar bushings. The other thing I think it could possibly, the only kind of wild card, as it were, that I still don't know about is if it's maybe the tie rods. But I did check them, but they seemed okay. But that's my only other thought. Like, it could maybe be the gearbox going bad, but that doesn't really make sense either, because that should maybe at the most translate to the steering wheel wobbling. But when I brake really bad, and when the stumble is really bad, it's like the whole front end of the truck is like shaking and hopping up and down. So I don't know. I'm kind of wondering if it's the rotors are heating up prematurely, and then they just warp, you know, for a couple minutes, you know, like while you're braking they warp, and then they straighten out when they cool down. So I don't know, that's my next plan of attack, is maybe to look into getting a new front brake setup on this truck. So that's the update. Thanks for watching, and if you have any questions or comments, any helpful tips, put them in the comments, and I'll try to answer back, and that would be helpful as well. Thanks.